Hello, this is Chris, the game dev, and today I'm going to show you how to make destructible objects in Unity. I'm going to be using two programs. One of them is going to be Blender and the other one's going to be Unity. I'll show you an example, those crates breaking and also this object breaking here. Now, I'm not going to show you the full particle effects and everything. I'm going to show you the very basics, and then in a future video, I will show you how to do particle effects, sound effects, and all that stuff. So let's start very simply with a new scene in Blender. I have a cube here. I do not need the camera, so I'm going to select and delete it. Do not need the light, select and delete it. So I have this basic cube, which I'm going to eventually destroy. So I'm going to want to make this a bit bigger for my project. I mean, of course, this could be any object that you want in your game. You can, as long as it has 3D mesh, you can do this. And I'm just going to format the way that I like to do. So I usually do a backup folder and I call the object, let's call it maze cube. Okay. So I have my basic cube here, and it's 5 meters by 5 meters by 5 meters. Now, I'm also going to clear and apply all the transforms. So this is going to bring the scale and everything to 1, and this is something that I find is just important when you start messing with some of the meshes. So I have this basic object, but how do I break it up? Now, there's two ways to do this. There's two ways to add polygons to it, because we can't just break up the mesh as it is, because it only has a point in each corner. So one of the methods that we can do is simply just go to loop cut, and we can start adding loops to it and start adding more polygons to the mesh like this, and just going up and down and adding more polygons, as many as you need. Of course, it really depends on how detailed you want this object to be. The more polygons, the heavier it's going to be for your program. The less polygons, the lighter it's going to be for your program, but it might not be as detailed. So the whole idea is you want to find a happy balance between detail and optimization, depending, of course, what your game is and how you optimize everything. I will show you some optimization tips as well. So after doing these loops, if I'm happy with this, I can move on to the next step, but let me quickly show you a different way of doing it. So I'm going to undo all my loops, and what I can do is I can go down to the modifiers, and I can add a modifier, and what I want to add is a modifier that is called subdivision surface. So subdivision surface will add more polygons to my mesh. However, if I leave it as the base settings, it's going to look a little weird. So it doesn't look like a cube anymore. So I'm going to just press simple, and simple will allow to keep the mesh's shape the way it is. Then from here, I'm going to change the render and the viewport to 4. I'm going to click this little object. I'm going to get out of edit mode. So before, I would press shift or tab to go into edit mode to do my slices. I'm going to press edit mode and go into object mode. So every time you want to go into edit mode, just press shift, or I keep saying shift, press tab. Okay, so now since I'm here, I can click this little subdivision up here in the modifiers and click apply. Now when I press tab again, I can see that I have a whole bunch of little squares here, and I just essentially added more polygons to this mesh. So these are the two ways of doing it. Personally, I like adding the meshes by hand using the cut tool, so I'm going to do that very quickly. I don't think I need too many, but I'm just going to add, let's do, okay, I think I'm going to do a few more probably. Let's do another bunch. Okay, something like that. All right, that looks pretty good to me. Now with this step over, our object now has a bunch of polygons on it. And we need this because this is how we're going to break it up. So now I'm going to go to Object and Quick Effects. Quick Effects, and I'm going to Cell Fracture. Now in Cell Fracture, you have a bunch of settings here. The settings that I like to use, I do like to use a bit of noise. It helps to randomize things. So you can choose noise anywhere between 1 and like 0.5. Again, you can mess with the settings. And then source limit is the amount that the object is going to fracture into. So I think 100 might be a bit too high, especially for this object. So I'm going to choose 30. I think 30 is okay. Again, this depends on your your object and what you want to do. If you want a lot of tiny little fragments, again, it's going to be heavier for your game engine. Just increase that number. And if you want things to be like super low poly and just want a few fragments, then bring the number lower. But in my case, I think 35 is all right. I'm going to press OK, and it's going to do its work. Now, as you can see, there's a bit of fritzing, but the object is also broken up as well. So the reason why it's fritzing is because the original object mesh cube is on. Once I turn it off, then we have all my cell fractures. Now the next step is I'm going to export all these objects together. So I'm going to export the object in its entirety and then the broken up objects as well. So first I'm going to select the original cube. So I'm going to select the original cube, file, export. I like using FBX. You can use whatever you want, okay? So cube maze blocker is what I'm going to call it. Now I have a setting here that I use, an operator preset, and it's just selecting the object, and essentially you just want to, don't mess with these settings too much. You just use consistent settings between both the broken object and the regular object. I have a preset where it's limit to selected objects, so it's the only object that's selected that's going to be exported, and some other settings here that just talk about its orientation. So that's something that you can look into as well. So I'm going to export that. Now I'm going to go to my self-fractured object, and I'm going to click and hold all the cell objects in the broken up objects. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go to export, FBX, and I'm going to call this something different. So cube master blocker, maze blocker, broken is what I'm going to type in. Sweet. And now with these two objects, I'm going to go pop over into Unity. So here into Unity, I'm going to import my objects. So give me 1 second. Let me find my objects. Okay. So I'm going to bring in the original cube, and then I'm going to click and drag my broken objects. My broken object. Okay. So here I have the original cube. And I'm going to want both the cube and the broken objects to be in the same position for this to work. So I'm going to make sure that I have a position. At this moment, it doesn't really matter, but I am going to keep solid, like nice numbers, just to simplify things. So, okay. Ooh, that means, okay, hold on. All right, is this where my object is? Okay, cool. So I'm going to choose 30. I'm going to choose -30. No, I want the object to be in the air a little bit. You'll see in one moment why I want this object to be in the air. 25. And then let's make Z 50. Okay, we have some nice numbers here. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to group this as, I'm going to create empty, or no, I'm going to create empty parent and make an object that's going to house the both the broken object and the object that's together. So I'm going to call this cube maze control. The only reason why I'm calling it maze is because that's what I'm using it in my game, but you can call it whatever you want, whatever makes sense to you. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click the broken object and put it in the same root parent that we have here. So now I should have the original object and the broken object with all the cell fractures in it. Now, I'm going to want to add something to make the cell fractures kind of go all over the place and explode. Now, there's two ways that you can do this. There's an optimized way and a not so optimized way. And there's also further code that we can go into later, but just very, very simply, I'm going to select all the objects and I'm going to just add a box collider. Now, a box collider isn't very accurate. The pieces are going to kind of go flying, but it's going to be a lot more lightweight and not as heavy or as expensive for the gaming engine. But for this case, it works fine. If it doesn't really work for you and you want more accurate collisions for whatever reason, remember it's more expensive, but you can add a mesh collider. And even if you do convex and mesh collider convex, it's going to be a bit lighter, but again, this is like a heavier way of doing it. And I'll show you the results of using both techniques, but just be aware that mesh, like I want to talk about optimization. Optimization is serious. So for now, I'm just going to do box collider, but we're also going to need a way for it to interact with physics. So I'm going to add a rigid body. Now you can mess with the mass, drag, and all these settings, but as long as gravity is on, mass is set to 1, I'm going to leave it like that for now. Maybe I'll make the mass a little bit lighter so things can go a bit more flying up in the air. And I'm going to run this program. So when I run this program, we are going to see these objects kind of fly everywhere, and it's going to be kind of funny. So let's run it and see what happens. So as we see, we have the objects fly around, and again, the collisions aren't very accurate because I put just box colliders on everything. Let's do the same thing, but instead of box collider, I'm going to add a mesh collider, and I'm going to make it convex because I think it needs it for physics, but we will see momentarily. So now I'm going to show you the same thing with the mesh collider. So as we can see here, the stuff's breaking a lot more accurate. So this really depends on what you want to do. I kind of like the ridiculousness of it, you know, exploding around into pieces. And again, I have to make my game somewhat optimized. Sorry, ignore those bouncing ball things. So for me personally, I don't mind the box collider. Again, because I also have in my game, for example, I have like hundreds and hundreds of these that are going to be spawned. So I need them as optimized as possible, but it really depends on what you want to do. And yeah, that's pretty much the basics, except for now I want to switch between the two. So if I have something that is not broken and something's broken, how would I switch between the two? Let me just make sure that my original pieces are ready to fly around. Yeah, rigid body's on and box colliders are on. Sweet. So I'm going to write a new script. So let me just write a new script, and I'm going to call this broken object control. So I'm going to add broken object control to, let me just let the script assemble there, to the main game object that's going to house the together object and the broken object. Now at this moment, I actually don't need a box collider on the original because I kind of want the object to react to physics, like the object that's together, not the broken one. So I'm going to put and I'm going to actually turn off the broken objects for now. So right now I have an object here with a box collider, except for I don't necessarily need a box collider on this. I want it to be on the parent. So I'm going to copy and I'm going to paste it here. Now I'm going to turn off the original box collider, and if I click up here, it should have the same box collider with the same dimensions, which is really good because this is where I want to sort of control the cube. And I'm also going to add a rigid body, and I'm going to decrease the mass. Again, this is all stuff that you can alter depending on what you guys want to do. All right, let me open up the script. So the main thing I'm going to do, I'm going to need two things, and the first thing I'm going to need is a sort of a controller for the object. So I'm going to do a public game object, and I'm going to do an array brackets, and I'm going to do object control. Okay, sweet. And now I'm going to have two items in this game object, one that's going to be off and one that's going to be on at start. So when I go to void start, you can also do this in void awake as well. Void awake might be better actually. So I'm going to do game object 0 set active equals false for the first object, and then I'm going to copy and paste that, and then I'm going to switch that to 1, but I'm actually going to keep the first object as true and the second object is false. So what's going to happen is right on start, one object's going to be on, the other object's going to be off. Very simple stuff over here, nothing too crazy. I do not need these two lines at the top, and I'm going to remove those. All right, sweet. So now I'm going to click my game object here, and as we can see, we see object control. I'm going to add two items to it. The first item is going to be the main cube that doesn't explode or do anything crazy. And then the second item I'm going to add is the broken maze objects. Awesome. Now, very simply, I'm going to add a collision. Now, I'm going to have to look this up because I'm not like the most amazing programmer. Excuse the mess here. I'm trying to do this in one take, so please have patience. But it's at least this tutorial is nice and slow, and I'm talking to you. So I'm going to need a way to figure out if I enter the object, if the object enters something. So I'm going to look, you know what, I actually suggest a lot of people do this. I have a script that's just called references where I have code that I like to use often. So this is one. So I'm going to do void on collision enter collision. And basically what's going to happen is when something enters the object, it's going to react to it if I put a piece of script here. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to copy and paste my two object controls, and I'm going to turn the first object off as in false and the second object as in true. Now, if everything works properly, what's going to happen is this object, because there's gravity, it's going to fall. And then when it hits the ground, it's going to trigger that something has entered its collision area, and then it's going to fragment. Let's see if it works, or I don't know what I'm doing, and I don't know how to program. Oh, there we go. Hey, it works. So this is pretty much the tutorial. So you want to do void on collision enter. And you know what I can do even? I will put this script in the description. I'll just copy and paste the script, so make it very easy. Just if you look in the description, you can copy and paste the code. Maybe I'll even leave it as a pinned comment if you really aren't good at programming. But this is very simple programming. So essentially we have, let's just do a quick recap. We went into Blender, created an object, we self-fractured it, we brought it over into Unity with a complete object and a broken object, and then we were able to break it when something enters the object area. Now, for better optimization, I will do probably next step. We need to probably turn the original collider off, because right now this collider is on. So I'll do that too, okay. So we're gonna want to, let me go to my reference code. Do I have collision dot set active? Maybe I can do, okay. So let's do private collider. Yeah, I can do brackets. So actually, no, I probably don't need to. So I'm going to, on awake, I'm going to try to grab the collider. So I'm going to do, and again, the reason why I'm doing this is that there's a box around the original object that I want to turn off, because it will still act as if there's a box there when there really isn't. Instead, there's like cell fractures. So I'm going to want to turn the original box off. I didn't initially plan on getting to this, but so collider dot get component collider enable is equal to true. So we're going to get the component. As long as your script has a collider, for example, like this box collider, it's going to get it. And it's going to be enabled. Now, when an object is broken and it detects that something has collided, I'm going to set it to false, which means I'm just going to turn it off. Now, if all goes well, this object's going to fall, it's going to break, and the original box collider is just going to turn off, so we won't have any weird physics stuff going on. All right, so let's go false, and the collider's still on. If you see here, the collider's still on. Oh no. Object get component collider. Maybe if I make this a public collider. Sorry, guys. Okay, so what I did essentially is I made it a public collider. I clicked and dragged the box here, so this man's better turn off right now. Ah, there we go. Hey, look, it worked. Okay, so right now, sorry about the little hiccup. I want to be efficient, but hey, we're learning together. So the box collider's off, so there won't be any weird physics, and now I have the objects all broken up and around here. So yeah, I taught you guys some methods on, well, I taught you a method on how to do this. However, there will be a part 2 where we'll get a little bit more advanced. We'll add particle effects. We'll add some texture according to a certain textile density. I'll briefly talk about that as well. And we'll add some sound effects and have a really fun, and optimization. Optimization is very important. So if you found this video interesting, let me know in the comments down below. I did this all in one take, and hopefully it turned out all right because I'm not doing another take. But yeah, I hope you found this video useful, and I will see you in the next one. And let me know if you want to see another tutorial, a continuation of this video, because I'll make it a lot quicker if people are interested. If not, it might take a little bit longer. All right, comprende? All right, thank you very much for watching, guys. I will see you in the next video. Peace out.